Elena had learned, over many long months, how to disappear while standing perfectly still. She had learned how to fold her arms just so, how to keep her sleeves pulled down even in warm weather, how to smile with her mouth while her eyes stayed empty. In the Blackthorn pack, an Omega who drew attention was an Omega who invited trouble, and Elena had already learned that lesson too many times to forget it. Tonight, the entire packhouse buzzed with quiet panic. Word had spread that the Alpha King himself, Damian Ashford, ruler of the Northern Territories, was making an unannounced inspection of the eastern packhouses. Every wolf in the compound had scrubbed the floors, straightened the halls, and rehearsed calm expressions, because no one wanted the king to sense that something in Blackthorn Pack was deeply wrong. Elena's only goal was simple: stay in the back, stay quiet, let the night pass without being noticed. She almost succeeded. King Damian moved through the packhouse with the quiet authority of someone who did not need to raise his voice to be obeyed. He greeted the pack alpha with a firm nod, walked past rows of bowing wolves, and asked sharp, precise questions about pack finances and territory boundaries. He was 3 steps past Elena, who stood near the back wall with her head down, when his wolf went suddenly and completely still. Something was wrong. Beneath the sharp chemical smell of suppressants, faint but unmistakable, was the scent of blood. Not a single drop. Layers of it, old and new, the kind of scent that came from wounds reopened again and again. He turned around. Elena felt her heart drop into her stomach as his gaze settled on her. He was not looking at her face. He was studying the way she stood, the way her left arm remained pressed too carefully against her side, the way her weight shifted so she would not need to move that arm at all. To most people, it looked like nothing. To an Alpha King trained to read a body the way scholars read old books, it told an entire story. "Your sleeve," he said. His voice was calm, but there was no room in it for refusal. Elena's hands trembled as she reached up and slowly pulled back the fabric. Beneath it, her arm was marked with bruises in every stage of healing, thin white scars from something sharp, and one wound near her wrist that had clearly never been properly treated. It was the kind of injury that told anyone who looked closely that this had happened again and again, over a long stretch of time. The air in the room changed instantly. It grew heavy, almost suffocating, as if the temperature itself had dropped. Around them, wolves who had been standing tall a moment before suddenly found themselves kneeling, pressed down by the sheer weight of the king's anger. Damian's eyes, usually a calm and steady gold, shifted into a deep burning amber that Elena had never seen described in any story. "Who did this to you?" he asked. Each word came out slow and controlled, like a blade being drawn with great care so it would not slip. Elena's throat tightened. In Blackthorn Pack, naming names meant painting a target on your own back. She had learned that the hard way, more than once. "It doesn't matter," she whispered, looking anywhere but his face. "I can handle it myself." "You will never handle anything like this alone again," Damian said. Then, in a moment that surprised everyone watching, including Elena herself, he lowered himself down to her eye level. The terrifying power radiating from him did not fade, but his voice softened into something gentler, something almost careful. "I need names. Tonight. Please." The word please undid something in her. Alphas of his rank did not say please to Omegas. They commanded, they demanded, they took what they wanted. But Damian knelt in front of her like her answer actually mattered, like her pain was worth stopping for. So she told him. She told him about Marcus, the Pack Beta, who had decided long ago that an Omega, who did not speak up, deserved to be reminded of her place with his fists. She told him about Alpha Corbin, the Pack leader, who had looked the other way every single time, because a frightened, injured Omega asked no questions and caused no problems for him. And she told him, with her voice breaking for the first time all night, about Dr. Reyes, the Pack physician who had accepted money to write false reports, so that no one outside the Pack would ever learn the truth about her injuries. By the time she finished speaking, Damian had gone very still, and the amber in his eyes had not faded at all. He rose to his feet slowly. "Stay here," he told her, his voice firm but no longer cold, at least not toward her. "You are safe now. I promise you that." Elena watched him walk away, unsure whether to believe him. Promises were easy to make and easy to break, and she had heard enough of both to know the difference mattered. What happened next spread through Blackthorn Pack like wildfire. Within the hour, the pack house was surrounded by wolves, loyal only to the Alpha King. Damien did not send soldiers ahead of him and wait somewhere safe. He went himself, moving through the compound with the quiet, controlled fury of someone who had already decided exactly what needed to happen and would not be talked out of it. Marcus tried to run the moment he understood what was happening. He made it only a few steps before Damien's presence alone forced him to the ground, unable to move, unable to speak, pinned beneath a power far greater than his own. Alpha Corbin, who had built his authority on cruelty and silence, fell to his knees the instant Damien's power reached him, suddenly desperate to explain himself, to beg for a mercy he had never once shown the Omegas under his protection. Dr. Reyes confessed everything before Damien even had to ask a second question, the truth spilling out of him in a panicked rush, the moment he understood there was no escaping what he had done. Damien did not kill any of them. Whatever cruel stories were sometimes whispered about the Alpha King in distant territories, he was not a monster, and he did not become one that night. Instead, he did something that, in its own way, was far worse for men who had built their entire lives on power and position. He stripped Marcus of his rank in front of the entire pack, removing every privilege he had once held. He revoked Alpha Corbin's leadership entirely, declaring the position open and placing Blackthorn Pack under temporary oversight from his own territory. He ordered Dr. Reyes's license to practice medicine revoked across every pack under his rule, and made sure that no future employer would ever be unaware of what he had done. For wolves of high standing, losing rank and position could feel like losing everything. Damien made certain that these three men would spend a long time understanding exactly how much they had lost, and why. While all of this happened, Elena sat wrapped in a warm blanket that one of the king's guards had quietly brought her, listening to the sounds of a pack being turned upside down, because someone had finally decided that her pain mattered enough to act on. It was nearly dawn when Damien returned to her. His hands were clean, his composure fully restored, but there was still a faint trace of amber in his eyes that had not completely disappeared. He knelt in front of her once again, an Alpha King kneeling before the lowest-ranked wolf in a broken pack, and for a long moment he simply looked at her, as though trying to memorize every detail of a face he intended never to forget. "I should have found you sooner," he said quietly. "I am sorry that I did not." Elena did not know what to say to that. No one in her life had ever apologized to her for failing to notice her pain. She had grown so used to being invisible that an apology felt almost like a foreign language. "You're not going back to how things were," Damien continued, his voice steady and sure. "You are not going to hide your injuries again, and you are not going to face anything like this alone, not while I am still breathing. From tonight, you are under my protection, in my territory, and anyone who dares to raise a hand against you will answer directly to me." "Why?" Elena finally whispered, her voice small. "Why does this matter so much to you? I am no one important. I am just an Omega from a small pack." Damien's expression shifted, something raw and honest breaking through the composed mask of a king. "Because the moment I caught your scent tonight, something inside me recognized you as mine to protect. Not because of rank, not because of duty, but because some bonds do not ask for permission before they form. I felt it the instant I turned around and saw you standing there, trying so hard to disappear." He paused, searching her face carefully. "I understand if that frightens you. I understand if you need time. But I will not pretend I did not feel it, and I will not let you go back to a place where no one kept you safe." Elena's eyes filled with tears. She had not allowed herself to cry in a very long time. She had spent years believing that no one would ever choose her, that being the lowest-ranked Omega in her pack meant being permanently overlooked, permanently unworthy of protection or care. And yet here was the most powerful Alpha in the Northern Territories, kneeling in front of her, offering exactly the thing she had stopped believing she deserved. "I don't know how to trust this," she admitted. "I don't know how to trust anyone anymore." "Then we will go slowly," Damien said simply. "You do not need to trust me tonight, or tomorrow, or even next month. I only ask that you let me prove it to you, one day at a time, for as long as it takes." It was such a small promise compared to everything else that had happened that night, and yet it was the one that finally broke through the walls Elena had spent years building. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat, and allowed him to gently help her to her feet. As the sun began to rise over Blackthorn Pack, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and pink, Elena walked out of the pack house that had caused her so much pain, flanked by the Alpha King's guards, no longer hiding, no longer invisible. Behind her, the pack she was leaving would spend a long time rebuilding under new, more careful leadership, and the 3 men who had hurt her would spend a much longer time living with the consequences of what they had done. In the weeks that followed, Elena slowly began to heal, both in body and in the quieter, harder places inside her that no bandage could reach. Damien kept his word in small, steady ways that meant more to her than grand gestures ever could. He made sure a pack doctor she could actually trust checked on her injuries every week. He gave her space when she needed it, and stayed close when she needed that instead. He never once raised his voice at her, never once made her feel like a burden for needing time. Slowly, carefully, Elena began to believe that maybe, for the first time in her life, she was somewhere safe enough to stop hiding for good. And somewhere in that quiet, patient healing, something new began to grow between her and the Alpha King, who had refused to look away, a bond built not on power or rank, but on the simple, steady promise that she would never again have to face her pain alone.